Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be taking a closer look at Venom. So Venom did receive a buff from Kabam that actually made him a good champion. He was always extremely kind of menacing presence on the screen. Unfortunately, he lacked the abilities to back it up. However, after he did receive his buff, he has improved massively. So first few basic things about Venom. He over time generates buffs. You can get armor up, physical resistance, fury, precision, cruelty, and so on. You gain these buffs at random. However, I think many people are kind of sleeping on the fact that you can re-roll the buff you gained last when you land a heavy attack. Heavy attack also has a decent armor break on it that lasts for 11 seconds. Then his level 1 utility basically lets you convert opponents' buffs into healing for yourself, so you can heal off your level 1 if opponent is gaining buffs. Level 2 converts all existing buffs into temporary fury buffs, so you can gain some really nice damage using your level 2s. And level 3 basically just kind of hits harder with your buffs on. But the main points are the fact that no Spider-Verse character can evade Venom's attacks, which is a huge bonus because Spider-Mans are quite annoying to face pretty much in every stage of the game. Also, he cannot be power drained by tech champions, which comes in handy more often than you think. And against all hero champions, you basically gain increased bleed accuracy and some extra damage. So those are main utilities of the Venom. And also it is worth mentioning that he automatically activates True Strike when opponents are at 18% or less against any opponent. So there we go. They are basic Venom's utilities. His signature ability is nice to have. It's not necessary. It basically improves the potency of his buffs and also lets you start the fight with some additional buffs already, so you have a quicker ramp up. As for his damage output, majority of his damage comes from combination of your buffs via furies, cruelties, and precisions, increasing your critical damage, critical rate, and base attack kind of, and your bleeds. Bleeding also does give Venom quite a bit of damage, so he is performing a lot better against opponents that he can bleed. As you can see here, we are 100 hits in against Winter Soldier. We have managed to get 5 furies, a cruelty, a precision, so we have a fairly decent, well-rounded set of buffs. Now we have extended maximum number of buffs that we can gain via Carnage synergy. However, I think typically it's capped at 6 or 7. Now we have a few extra ones there. So as we saw there, we did get smacked in the end. However, we finished the fight in 123 hits, which is not bad at all for a rank 4 5-star. Now we're gonna have another example of a fight against Winter Soldier just to kind of demonstrate that we are able to choose and spin which buffs we want. But even though we can respin the buffs quite often, we end up with some of the buffs that we do not want, just because genetic memory is always working in the background, and if you do not land enough heavy attacks to kind of get to the buff that you need, you are going to be stuck with like an armor up or physical resistance or something that does not help your damage. Then if you did not build up kind of like well enough for you to be satisfied, you can just re-roll it all with a level 2. And that is the thing about Venom's damage. It is always kind of shifting a bit here and there depending what kind of buffs you get. But I did several test fights against this Winter Soldier, and we always pretty much finished somewhere in between 120 and 140 hits. So you can fairly consistently get the same amount of damage using your heavy attacks, re-rolling your buffs, launching your level 2s, resetting what buffs you have on you, and using those massive furies to help you. Another quick thing to mention, doesn't really come into aspect of his practicality, but he does feel really enjoyable to play, kind of tearing an opponent, and he always has kind of like amazing game presence. Whenever he came out as an AQ boss, he was always kind of like dreadful to fight and intimidating, and you get the same effect now. Before he couldn't back that up with his abilities, now he can, and he actually does feel like a fun, cool, enjoyable character to play. Now let's go over kind of like my overall thoughts about him as we have some more fights here. Some of them are going to be in Act 6, some of them are going to be from Variant 2, he is one of the better champions for variant 2 just because he's an extra large champion. He can completely bypass all the glancing stuff, and also there is a quest with his name on it with increased bleed damage, and basically that lets him place 2 debuffs whenever he would inflict a debuff, or gain 2 buffs whenever he would gain a buff. So that is basically Venom on steroids, which is what we're going to see later in the video. Now, do I think the character has fair amount of inherent weaknesses? Yes, I do. He does rely on his bleeds and his debuffs by a fair bit, and on his buffs or his damage. He's slightly RNG based, but typically you can fix all of that with heavy attacks and your level 2s. There's another issue with him being able to prevent evades against Spider-Man characters, which I'm going to show right about now. As we can see here, Spider-Man is about evade, as we saw evade activated. Why did that happen? Because we didn't have that black buff we receive at the beginning of each fight. We didn't have, because it got pilfered. Because it is an active buff, it can get nullified, pilfered, it can be eaten by buffet. So you do have to be careful and do have to keep that in mind. You need to have the genetic memory buff working for you in background and be active in order for him to stop Spider-Man from evading. Also, unfortunately, this character doesn't have any immunities, so that kind of cuts his versatility down a bit too. But overall, I do enjoy playing Venom. I do think he's a great character. There are obviously some benefits to being able to dish out many debuffs, steal buffs. As we can see here against Wolverine, we're pretty much going to feed on his regens for majority of the fight. Therefore, we're going to be shutting down his ability to regenerate, and we're going to be regenerating ourselves. So there is an extremely large amount of matchups where Venom can gain a lot of extra heal, and that can make him even usable with Suicide Masteries, just because you kind of cover your recall damage for most part. So I do like that. I do like a champion that can handle suicides at least to a reasonable degree. Unfortunately, his ability doesn't work on passives, and we're seeing more and more champions with passive buffs, so that is slightly annoying, but you take them when you get them, kind of thing. So another kind of interesting matchup here, we can take a look at Crossbones, just because Crossbones has a chance to shrug off debuffs that we place on him, which would be in this case our bleeds, and convert them into furies, which in essence is kind of working in our favor, just because that's going to make sure he always have plenty furies on him for us to eat and heal ourselves. So there are kind of like many kind of interesting scenarios how Venom interacts with different opponents. Typically, if opponent can shrug off debuffs, it's a bad thing, but in this case, like against Crossbones, it actually works out really well for us, just because we get some free heal in there. And even though Venom is not the hardest hitting champion, his damage is still above average, and that sustainability in many matchups with his heal, his ability to shut down evades, does make Venom quite useful in quite few scenarios. Like, he was MVP in variant 2. There are some fights in Act 6 that he absolutely shines in. In AQ map 7, there are some annoying Spider-Man paths with basically like 50% away chance on all the Spider-Mans, and Venom can deal with all of that. And I think that is kind of like going to be a timeless value of Venom, just because Spider-Mans have been annoying opponents throughout the contest. Whether you're playing Act 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's always annoying Spider-Man to face with his evades, whether it's Miles Morales, OG Spider-Man, now buffed up Spider-Gwen can be pain in the bottom as well, and we have Stealth Suit Spidey. So they just keep on coming, and that's why I did use my Cosmic 3 to 4 rank up gem on Venom. I was sitting on that gem for quite a bit, and I wasn't kind of sure who should I rank up. But yeah, I just realized that Kabam loves Spider-Mans. Venom is pretty much a perfect Spider-Man counter that has a reasonable amount of utility outside of Spider-Man matchups, and therefore we did end up ranking Venom. So here's going to be another matchup that Venom does like, and it's like Vulture. And it's not explicitly meant to be just Vulture, it's also any node that gives opponents like permanent armor up or permanent physical resistance buffs or fury buffs or any kind of buffs, and you can see that kind of nodes fairly often scattered throughout the contest. And the fact that they regain these buffs after like X amount of seconds always on the nodes, and in this case Vulture, does also kind of give Venom an easy ability to heal. So even against matchups he typically would not be able to access his heal, thanks to these nodes that are often placed on opponents, you can still get some healing off pretty much with every single level 1 you throw. And now we're gonna check out Spider-Gwen's matchup. So as we all probably know by now, Spider-Gwen has a ridiculously high chance of evading your attacks if she builds up her spider sense charges, and she does so just by us striking her. So in every single fight you're facing Spider-Gwen, she is gonna amp up to 5 spider sense charges and then start evading like crazy. However, Venom can completely bypass it. Venom is an excellent option against every single Spider-Man character. Miles Morales, OG Spidey, new Stealth Suit Spidey, Spider-Gwen, Cosmic Spidey, the Symbiote Spidey. So yeah, Venom handles all of them just by completely eliminating that evade and making those fights relatively easy and harmless. And next, after this fight, we're obviously gonna take a look at bleed vulnerability lane in the 3.3 second variant in Micro Realms. So opponents are gonna down insanely quickly. Like every bleed we place on him is doubled, every buff we get is doubled, so our damage is going insane. So every fight is gonna last basically a few combos, and this is like what everybody likes to showcase of Venom. And fair enough, it is great fun, but you can't realistically expect him to perform in such a manner in every quest. But still, he does have solid enough damage output. So as these final fights are happening in the background, so my kind of overall opinion about Venom. Do I think he's top of the crop Cosmic Champion? No. Do I think he's somewhere up there? Yes. He is yet again one of those champions that is an extremely useful tool to have for certain situations. But unlike many of those counter-specific champions, he is also enjoyable to play in kind of everyday general questing scenarios. So do I think he's gonna be MVP of everybody's roster? No. There are better champions than Venom in game. There are champions who hit harder. There are champions who can deal with the weight. But do I think he packs a good amount of utility in like a solid pack with decent damage, enjoyable animations, good playstyle, some sustainability? Yes, for sure. So, do I recommend ranking up Venom? It depends who you have. Do I think Corvus, new Captain Marvel movie, and Hyperion are all better champions that are going to be more useful in more different situations? Yes, there are better champions than him. Or is he great fun and still can be extremely useful champion? Definitely. Should you hesitate to rank up Venom if you are kind of stuck for Cosmic Champions or options to deal with Spider-Mans and Wade? No, you shouldn't. So yeah, there you go. I think Venom is an extremely solid character that can in fact help many summoners out there. Is he gonna be cream of the top champion for most of you? Probably not. You probably have some of the god tiers that are in fact better champions, like Ghosts, Corvuses, Omegas, and so on. But still, Venom can stand right next to them and be an extremely good support character for your roster. He does not rely on any synergy, so you can always kind of slap him on a team, bring him with you, and just check which matchups he will perform better at. But anyways, guys, that is going to be me pretty much done for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this brief Venom overview. I hope you maybe picked up a thing or two, or you just kind of gave a second look to your Venom if you are sleeping on him. And don't be lazy. If you do enjoy these videos, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, share it with your alliance, check out these videos together, discuss, and come back for some more. But that is gonna be me out today. See you guys.